What makes a true leader? Is it power, wealth, or something deeper? In this story, you will learn English while discovering the life of a man who helped shape a nation, not with loud words but with quiet strength. This is the story of George Washington, a boy who worked on a farm, a man who led an army, and a leader who chose service over power. Follow his journey from the fields of Virginia to the founding of a country. Improve your English fluency through one of history's most inspiring lives. What if a quiet boy from the countryside became the leader of a new country? What if the future of millions started with a child who loved to ride horses and work on a farm? This is the beginning of the story of George Washington, one of the most important figures in American history. He wasn't born rich or powerful, but he was born with dreams and a strong will to grow. George Washington was born in 1732 in a small house in Westmoreland County, Virginia. At that time, America was not yet a country. It was a group of colonies ruled by the British government. George grew up in a world where rules came from far across the ocean, and life on the farm was simple but hard. His father worked to grow tobacco, and his mother was a strong, serious woman who taught her children to be honest and responsible. As the oldest son in the house, George had many responsibilities, helping take care of his siblings and doing many chores. He learned how to ride horses, cut wood, and care for the land from a young age. There were no modern machines, and life offered few comforts. Every day brought more work, planting, cleaning, building, and fixing, but George stayed focused and never complained. He listened carefully to others, learned by watching, and gave his best to every task. He didn't have the chance to attend school for many years like children do today. When George was only 11 years old, his father died. This changed his life and future plans completely. His older brothers had studied in England, but after his father's death, George stayed in Virginia and had to grow up quickly. He began studying math, writing, and map-making on his own. He read books, practiced writing letters, and learned from adults around him. Even as a teenager, he had a serious and thoughtful personality. George liked order and fairness. He wanted to be honest and do what was right, even when it was difficult. There's a famous story that says young George once cut down a cherry tree and admitted it by saying, "I cannot tell a lie." That story may not be true, but people have told it for generations because it reflects the kind of person George wanted to be, someone others could trust. George also loved being outside. He explored the forests and learned how to read the land, watch animals, and find his way through nature. These experiences made him calm and capable in difficult situations, which would help him later in life when he became a soldier and a leader. As a young man, George became a land surveyor, someone who measures and maps land. This job sent him deep into the wilderness, where he met many kinds of people, farmers, hunters, and Native Americans. He traveled far from home and kept detailed notes and careful maps, learning how wide and rich the land truly was. People respected his work because he was serious, reliable, and skilled. He was tall and quiet, and although he didn't speak much, when he did, people paid attention. He didn't try to impress others, but his discipline and fairness stood out. His early years shaped the man he would become. Even then, he showed signs of leadership and self-control. He didn't grow up with special advantages, but he used every moment to learn and grow. His character was built through small daily actions, waking early, working hard, listening closely, and staying honest. The boy who lived on a small farm in Virginia could not have known he would one day lead a new nation. But every day, in his quiet way, he prepared for that future. And that is how greatness begins, not with loud promises, but with quiet strength and steady effort. As George Washington grew older, his sense of responsibility also grew. He wanted to do more than measure land. He wanted to serve and protect the place he called home. In his early 20s, George joined the Virginia Militia, a local group of citizen soldiers. He had no formal military training, but his confidence, height, and leadership skills made him stand out quickly. At that time, tensions between the British and the French were rising in North America. Both countries wanted control of the same land. Their conflict became known as the French and Indian War. George Washington was chosen to deliver messages and later lead missions for the British side. It was a dangerous job, filled with risks, but George accepted it with courage. In one mission, he traveled hundreds of miles through freezing forests, crossing rivers and facing attacks. He stayed calm under pressure and proved he was brave and dependable. He made mistakes too, as all young leaders do. In his first major battle, a decision he made helped spark a larger conflict, and he had to surrender. But George didn't give up. He learned from every mistake. He continued to lead men in battle and earned respect for his bravery and honesty. He knew that being a leader wasn't about being perfect. It was about being responsible, learning quickly, and showing courage when it was needed most. As the war continued, George's leadership improved. He helped build forts, trained soldiers, and worked hard to keep his men strong and organized. After the war ended, he returned to Virginia with a new reputation. People now saw him not just as a land surveyor, but as a leader and a man of honor. He returned to farming, managing his land at Mount Vernon. He also married a woman named Martha Custis, a widow with 2 children, and became a stepfather. Together, they worked to build a peaceful life. But George never stopped thinking about the future of his country. He believed that the colonies should have a voice. He didn't want to fight again, but he also didn't want to live under unfair rules. The British government began placing heavy taxes on the American colonies. These taxes angered many people, including George. He believed that people should not pay taxes unless they had a say in government. "No taxation without representation," became the cry of the people. George did not like talking in public, but he joined meetings with other colonial leaders. He wanted to help find a solution. At first, the colonies hoped to work things out peacefully with Britain. But over time, things became worse. Soldiers were sent to control the people. Protests turned violent. And slowly, the idea of independence, of breaking away from Britain, began to grow. George was careful with his words, but he believed in freedom. He believed that people should be able to choose their leaders and make their own laws. He had already proven his loyalty and leadership in war. Now, people began to look to him again, not just as a farmer or soldier, but as someone who might lead a new fight for freedom. The man who once measured land for others now stood ready to help shape a new land for everyone. And though he didn't seek power or fame, he was willing to lead, because he believed it was the right thing to do. By the 1770s, the American colonies were full of anger and hope. People wanted freedom, but they also feared war. Leaders from different colonies met to discuss what should happen next. These meetings were called the Continental Congress. George Washington was chosen to attend. He did not talk much, but when he did, people listened. He didn't try to lead, but his past showed that he could. His quiet strength gave others confidence. In 1775, everything changed. A battle broke out between American colonists and British soldiers in Massachusetts. The fight for independence had begun. The colonies needed a leader for their army. They chose George Washington, not because he asked, but because he was trusted. He accepted the job not for glory, but for duty. He promised to take no pay and to serve the people with all his heart. The army he took command of was small and not well trained. Many soldiers were farmers, blacksmiths, and shopkeepers. They had courage, but not experience. They had spirit, but not supplies. George knew this would be the hardest fight of his life. He didn't win every battle. In fact, he lost many, but he never gave up. He kept the army together through hunger, cold, and fear. During one cold winter at Valley Forge, his soldiers had almost nothing: no shoes, little food, thin clothes. Many were sick, some died, but George stayed with them. He walked among the tents, he listened, he gave hope. His presence alone gave strength. He led not just with orders, but with example. Over the years, he learned how to fight smarter. He surprised the British with quick attacks, clever moves, and strong defense. He made friends with other countries like France who helped the American cause. And slowly, after years of struggle, the tide began to turn. In 1781, with help from French allies, George led the final major battle of the war at Yorktown. The British army surrendered. The war was over. America was free. But even after victory, George didn't act like a king. He didn't try to take power for himself. He stepped down from the army and returned home. The world had never seen this before. A man who won a war and gave up control. He believed in something bigger than himself, a country ruled by people, not by force. And because of his actions, the people trusted him even more. He had helped win freedom, but his true strength came from what he chose not to take. This made him not just a hero of war, but a hero of peace. After the war, the colonies became the United States of America, but the work was just beginning. The new country needed a strong government and a wise leader. People from all over the land looked to George Washington. They respected him for his honesty, his service, and his choice to walk away from power when he could have taken it. In 1789, something historic happened. George Washington was elected as the very first president of the United States. He did not campaign. He did not ask for the job, but he accepted it with humility and purpose. He knew that everything he did would set an example for future leaders. There were no guides or rules. He was the first. He helped form a team of advisors, now called the cabinet, to help him make decisions. He signed laws and made sure they were followed. He worked to keep peace between states and other countries. He wanted the country to be strong but fair, united but free. He traveled to meet citizens and listen to their concerns. He tried to stay above arguments and not support only one side. He believed the president should lead with calm judgment and steady hands. George served 2 four-year terms as president. During those years, the capital moved, money systems were created, and roads and trade grew stronger. But he always remembered his promise to return home. After 8 years, he chose not to run again. This was another powerful moment. He gave up power peacefully, showing the world how democracy should work. When he left office, he gave a speech to the people. In it, he warned against fighting between political groups and told Americans to stay united. He said, "The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism." His words reminded people to put their country before personal gain. George Washington didn't try to be a king. He didn't want control. He simply wanted to serve to guide the young nation with care and honesty. And through quiet strength, he gave shape to the office of the president and to the country itself. While George Washington is remembered as a president and general, his personal character is what made people admire him most. He lived with honesty, patience, and discipline. He didn't seek attention. He believed in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. At Mount Vernon, his home in Virginia, George returned to farming after he left the presidency. He rose early each day, walked his land, and spoke with workers. He managed his farm carefully and believed in learning new methods to improve his crops. Although he had great responsibilities, he remained humble. He welcomed guests from around the world but never acted proud or better than others. He cared deeply for his wife, Martha, and was a devoted stepfather to her children. He valued family, and home life brought him peace after years of public service. People continued to write him letters, asking for advice or simply thanking him for his leadership. He answered as many as he could. Even after stepping down from power, he was still seen as the heart of the country. When problems came up in government, leaders still asked, "What would George Washington do?" He was not perfect. Like many people of his time, he had beliefs and practices we question today. He was a man of his era. But even in a world of change and challenge, George tried to live by principle. He believed in working hard, staying calm, and keeping promises. He thought leaders should serve others, not themselves. His quiet strength gave others courage. His example helped shape a nation. To the end of his life, George Washington continued to guide the United States, not through power, but through respect. And that respect came not from what he demanded, but from what he gave. George Washington's life came to an end in 1799. He died at Mount Vernon, the home he loved, surrounded by his family and land. The nation mourned deeply. Bells rang across cities. People cried in the streets. For many, it felt like losing a father. They called him the father of his country, not just because he was the first president, but because he helped give birth to the United States. He guided the country through its most fragile years. He showed that true leadership is about service, not power. Today, we still see his name everywhere, on cities, streets, schools, and even the capital of the country. His face appears on money and monuments. His story is taught in schools. But his true legacy lives in the ideas he believed in: freedom, responsibility, and unity. He proved that someone who works hard, learns constantly, and serves with honor can change history. George Washington was not perfect, but he was deeply human. He showed that greatness comes not from pride, but from purpose. His strength was quiet, and his wisdom was steady. His choices helped a new nation stand tall. When you study George Washington, you learn more than just names and dates. You learn how patience, courage, and character can build something that lasts. His life reminds us that every day is a chance to do what's right, not for fame, but for the future. He was a farmer, a fighter, a leader, and above all, a citizen. And in the story of America, he will always be one of its most important voices. George Washington's story is more than a history lesson. It's a reminder of what it means to lead with honesty, courage, and purpose. From a quiet childhood to becoming the first president, his life shows us that true greatness is built through consistent, thoughtful actions. Thank you for learning with us. If this story helped you grow your English or inspired you, leave a comment below. Subscribe for more true stories that teach real English. And remember, every great journey begins with a single step. See you in the next story.